Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Roundup episode. So, Riot's Vanguard anti-cheat is once again back in the headlines, this time apparently for, soft breaking computers, generally causing a bit of chaos. Speaking of that, Cyberpunk lets you fiddle with your squishy bits. We all want some of that. Xbox and Assassin's Creed got a little bit wrecked in an interesting fashion, plus a whole bunch of other news. Now, as always, be sure to like and sub, seriously helps us out. And if you'd like early access to our EA deep dive, our rising production costs deep dive, the daily briefing series, and even some physical loot, then you can check out our Patreon. And I mean, seriously, patrons, you have helped to keep this ship sailing. Thank you. And with that, let's get into the news. While this story is Riot focused, of course, it's about principles, and they could very well affect you in the games that you are playing. So, as much as Riot, may want it to go away, the public outcry over Vanguard, their anti-cheat, is not going away. Recent reported issues include it blocking software and actually just causing shutdowns. Now, the Valorant subreddit has got a catalogue of issues that players have found, but in researching this piece, we sort of noticed the moderators removing some of the more strongly worded posts. A pretty lengthy thread there entitled "Vanguard Soft Bricking Computers?" was scrubbed pretty thoroughly. And this is exactly what you would expect from the mods of a Riot sub. I mean, come on, they are literally shills. They're not on the payroll, but they're pretty darn close to Riot, and if you've ever been around a Riot sub, you'll pretty much know what I'm talking about. Anyway, one user noted that Vanguard was blocking access to MSI Afterburner, so, I think it was specifically for checking CPU temps. Then another reported losing control of their mouse and keyboard, with the only fix being to reboot their computer in safe mode, and another person claimed that Vanguard was blocking access to their Asus motherboard drivers. That's not good. That meant that things like, say, their fan curve, can't really do that. And then another person detailed the software deactivating their liquid cooling system's pump. So, no pump for you. Whoops. That's insane. Now, the main reasons, as ever, here just seem to be the fact that Vanguard, it's got deep access, a lot of permissions, it starts right as your PC, actually boots, it's got constant access to a variety of different processes, and it appears to just be casting a very wide net in what catches its attention. Now, after a recent update, you can finally deactivate Vanguard, but as we've discussed before, doing that places your computer into untrusted mode, and that actually means that you've then got to reboot your computer if you're actually able to or want to play Valorant again. Valorant won't let you in if you've deactivated it, but have not restarted your computer. So yes, Riot really want that thing weaseled in there deep. Now, their updates also may be a part of the problem here. Many Reddit users reported having no issues whatsoever until the most recent update basically just scuppered everything, so that's a bit bad for them. And with players, uninstalling Valorant as a precaution here and advising other people to do the same, Riot need to do something to win back favor, to actually change how this system is working. Otherwise, players have, an aggrieved belief that Riot are kind of dictating what they can and can't install, and just that Riot, because of how deep Vanguard is, have got too much control. Many people feel that Valorant is just not worth being falsely flagged as a cheater because of their motherboard drivers, which is a very reasonable concern. Now, while many of us, myself included, are not Valorant players, the reason why I'm really focusing in this story is principle, right? Anti-cheat software like this could be rolled out for any game that you play, so we should be aware of this as a potential issue. Do you want LOL, COD, or something else doing this? I would imagine not, and that's why even if you're not a Valorant player, you should be paying attention to this story. Then next up, the spicy drama. So, Microsoft aired a special episode of Inside Xbox, one dedicated to showing us third-party titles that will be coming to the Series X. And it showed off 13 new titles in total, 9 of which are going to support Microsoft's new smart delivery feature, which is a pretty good deal for consumers. Now, the show was basically a story of highs and lows. We learned that, the horror adventures, Scorn, and The Medium will be next-gen/PC only, so not cross-gen, and that there will actually be console exclusives for the Series X only when they launch. Now, both of those actually look like pretty interesting titles, but the show's apparent over-reliance on, indie or less-known projects, that seems to have not really gone over well with an audience that maybe expected more of the AAA big guns. The show's main draw was the world premiere gameplay footage of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which sort of turned out to be a blink and you'll miss it in-engine cutscene cutscene that taught us, literally, well, little to nothing about what the game actually is or plays like, because, importantly, it didn't have gameplay, even though it said it was a gameplay trailer. The show did sort of demonstrate, though, the kind of third-party support that smart delivery is going to be getting, at least, with the majority of games featured, and actually having smart delivery, which is really good. That's great for customers. It means that, you only have to make one purchase of the game and you will just get it. You'll get the optimum version on whatever hardware you're using. So that's really good. Refreshingly pro-consumer as well. And, Microsoft, they have pledged that all of the Xbox Game Studios titles are going to support that feature. Now, if Inside Xbox has taught us anything, though, it's that third-party support, third-party publisher stuff, does just make that whole thing a little bit more complicated. Why do I say that? Well, EA announced that Madden NFL 21, they showed it in the showcase, but they noted that the Series X upgrades will be provided for free for anyone who buys the game on Xbox One. Now, many people thought, oh, obviously, that just means that Madden supports smart delivery. But actually not quite. EA's upgrades are only going to be available for a limited time, so you'll have to purchase Madden by the end of December and then register it by the end of March. That's how that's actually working, according to the FAQ on EA's website. So no, it's not smart delivery. Now, at least EA are offering something there, but still, broad third-party support for smart delivery will be needed for that to be a feature that people really care about, and we're already seeing things just being a little bit mixed. So that is a bit strange. All in all, though, while the titles showcased, I think, do often look intriguing, Thursday's episode hardly set the world on fire. I mean, just look at that YouTube dislike ratio. It's not good. Though what is good is that Xbox are actually taking the public reaction to heart, and they've been on the apology train. So the marketing general manager, Aaron Greenberg, he apologized on Twitter for setting some wrong expectations. I think that's totally fair, and he assured people that the team are actually listening to their feedback. That's actually really refreshing. That is nice to see from a large corporation just after their marketing event. And I think that does show that Microsoft are pretty darn clued into the community, and I do respect them for that. Then Ashraf Ismail, the creative director of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, he told people that they rightfully expected more. That's his quote. And he said that more is on the way. So I think a pretty standard showing for games, but one that was overhyped and a perfect example of the frustration that we all have over gameplay trailers that, don't actually show gameplay. Perhaps, though, they've learned. I mean, certainly, the two groups, right? The two groups who actually earned those YouTube dislikes on the various different trailers, they almost immediately owned up to it. And I think that is a very good sign. The next up, and really to absolutely nobody's surprise, which does make this being a bit of news kind of funny, Cyberpunk 2077 has been rated mature by the ESRB. Wow. Now, the rating, though, this is what important. It sort of gives us a bit more of an insight into the content we'll be dealing with. And you know what? Actually, some of it's the type of bonkers you'd expect. So one mission reportedly involves assisting a character by hammering nails through his hands and feet. Sort of standard thing you do when you're walking down the street, really. So there's that. Then the game also contains a wide variety of real and fictitious illicit substances, which is also quite fun. And then the character creator also has what the ESRB call customizable genitals, which certainly is something to have in our video game. Now, there seemed to be a drama surrounding that. Maybe I'll have to double check there, but I mean, it seems right in line with the expectations that I would have from that game, and also from the genre, just the idea of, just whatever going, really. I mean, I think it's pretty cool the way they're going with the character customization, right? I think that is stuff that thematically fits very well with the cyberpunk genre. So, I mean, yes, like having the sex options, the gender options, whatever visuals you want for your character. I mean, thinking of something like, say, Altered Carbon, one of the cooler things there is that people can kind of choose whatever bodies or sleeves, as they call them in that universe, that they want. I think that's really fun, right? And also, there's the disparity between the people who, have got the income and the status to afford the really expensive sleeves versus the sort of, the less expensive ones. That stuff all makes like Altered Carbon a pretty cool universe. And it's like a good example of, just sort of body and mind in that like science fiction sort of context and what that can mean for storytelling. I mean, really, that's it. Like, it's all fertile soil for excellent storytelling. And really, that's what I'm interested in with this game. It's not really the visuals or the guns or anything like that, the surface level things. For me, it's knowing that, we're getting a take on this setting that's really going whole hog into that setting, from the people who, for an example, wrote Witcher 3's Bloody Baron arc. And I think if anybody is going to go into depth on that setting and do it justice and tackle the more, you can maybe say edgy, but maybe controversial aspects of that setting, then maybe even some of the core CD Projekt Red fan base would be uncomfortable with, well, you know what? I think they are the people who probably would be good at writing those stories, which means that, yeah, we're going to get this like crazy edgy stuff, and I'm actually expecting it to be done justice in the story. So that's why I'm excited, at least about this stuff. Now, of course, you wouldn't be watching gaming news YouTube without there being a little bit of drama in this story. So the rating did cause a little bit of a stir because it did note the presence of in-game purchases. That set off alarm bells, but CDPR were pretty quick to clear things up. A rep swiftly said that the in-game purchases label is a new ESRB requirement, but that's for games that may receive DLC or expansions in the future. So no, you're not going to be, I don't know, like paying for currency or anything like that. It's basically just a note that yes, this piece of software may have an in-app purchase for a DLC or expansion at some point. Next up, a bit of drama though. So this week, right, a story emerged detailing the supposed troubled development of Dying Light 2. Now, the article told a story of unfinished gameplay, a lack of clear vision, and just constant, iteration and changes, and it really going nowhere. And it also speaks of bad management and a toxic atmosphere that has caused 50 people to quit the developer Techland in the last 12 months, and just a general lack of clear leadership, which means that the game is kind of just in disarray, and that's a year out from release. That was a pretty spicy story, right? A pretty big one. Now, this article was then quickly rubbished by Techlad's even, their senior PR manager, which, I mean, the senior PR manager would say that, but they said that the translation of the article is totally inaccurate and the development is moving forward, with the game being in good shape. Who knows? I mean, the original story was certainly an interesting one, although it was very difficult to verify the claims in it, and then, the Techland staff tried to debunk it. So right now, it's definitely something to be curious about, to look into. But still, I mean, Dying Light 2, it's been in development for roughly 100,000 years at this point, so actual stories of internal strife, they wouldn't be too difficult to believe, I'll certainly say that. But anyway, let's move on. We've got a story of absolutely mad numbers. Animal Crossing New Horizons has sold over 13.4 million units in the 6 weeks since release, and the figures also suggest that New Horizons sold 1 million copies a day for its first 11 days. That's insane. That is so many sales. And this actually makes New Horizons the Switch's biggest launch to date. And for comparison, the previous record holder, Pokemon Sword and Shield, well, that took 9 weeks to move 13 million units. So Animal Crossing certainly is trending a lot faster. I think pretty incredible. It could just be, lightning striking, perfect time, perfect place for that game. But certainly for Nintendo, I mean, couldn't have better news, could they? Next, let's hop over to Ubisoft for a little bit. So, 8 years ago, footage of a Prince of Persia reboot was just posted on YouTube, and nobody noticed it until this week. Quite a wild thing. So Prince of Persia Redemption was in early development 10 years ago, and the footage is confirmed to actually be a pre-rendered game pitch, which Ubisoft ultimately ended up cancelling. Just an interesting tidbit, I thought I'd share it with you. Really, I would love to see this return though, especially with Assassin's Creed moving into that sort of more RPG direction. I think with that happening, there is totally room for both franchises, and certainly the early Prince games, I love them, so seeing more of that would be really cool. Anyway, let's hop over to a little bit of a fun drama situation. So, Overwatch League Season 2 runners-up, the Vancouver Titans, this week released their entire roster. Yep, they're all gone. Quite the hit, but it turns out it's actually not that salacious. Basically, travel restrictions were a massive problem for a Canadian team with an entirely South Korean roster. Basically, most of the potential solutions weren't really a great fit, which led to this happening. Now, what's interesting to me, though, is how much this is actually down to just the really strange team format that the OWL rolls with. How they're doing it like traditional sports style in home cities versus the older way of things not being city-based. One that actually makes some degree of sense for a competition, that the whole point is that it entirely transcends borders. A little bit weird. So, look, that's the official story, that it was travel stuff, but there are some rumors that players were sort of being shooed out the door, and that was a culmination of a wild series of just mismanagement, stuff like poor living conditions, unsatisfactory contracts following what was an excellent season for them, and things like untimely pay, right? Those allegedly had the players ready to strike, so apparently they just got, booted out. Who knows, right, if that's actually, if that stuff's actually true. But anyway, yes. there was some Overwatch League drama. And as always, really not that many people are watching the OWL, and it's entertaining to keep tabs on, but not really in the way that Activision Blizzard would like. There you go. That's what happens when Blizzard just decides, hey, grassroots esports that people sort of like from the ground up, nah, we're just going to force something in this game and completely kill it. Good job, Blizz. I mean, like, I remember StarCraft 2. You know, like, the StarCraft 2 stuff was so vibrant and healthy. There was tournaments popping up all over the place. And then Blizzard kind of just quashed it with the original ways that they did WCS. And then you sort of saw Blizzard with HOTS kind of do the same thing, like just try to, you know, trump up this esports scene out of nowhere. And then they just went full ridiculous mode with the OWL. Certainly in 3 or 4 years, I'd be very interested to see what that league is actually like, and just, you know, if them trying to pump it full of money to actually conjure up something very successful, if that actually works for that game. Somehow I kind of doubt it, especially with the likes of Valorant coming in and seemingly just stealing their pros. Anyway, that is it for me. Let me know what you thought about the stories today. And I mean, yeah, if you want to support us a bit more, there's the Patreon, you get some bonus content, of course, the daily briefing every single day, and even some physical loot. Or of course, just liking and subscribing helps us out a great deal as well. Thank you for all your support. And with that, I'll see you next time.